Hey, welcome to Dave's Train Room again. Okay, this being the end of the year, I figure I'd give you a end of the year update as to, well, I didn't have much to update since I just recently started making videos, but I just wanted to go through showing you what I accomplished here in the last little bit of time that I've had here. Um, First thing, I've got not three layouts, but I've got two layouts and one overhead O-gauge operating layout, which is where I run my Lionel stuff. Um, as far as the updates are, you can see my train room is still apart, but I am very quickly about to, and pretty much this evening, I'm going to put it all back together. But before that, I had a lot of stuff I needed done. And it's so much easier since I can just put my modules up on a stand and work on the underside. I can do this standing up very comfortably. Um, I wanted to make sure that I got all of this before I had it set down there so I wouldn't have to crawl under it again, at least until I started doing upgrades again. So, first thing we did, the easy stuff first. First thing I wanted to do is when I put the fascia on, I used screws a little bit too long. They were sticking out of the back. So what I did was I swapped all those, got them out, because when I moved these things, I was grabbing it. I was always poking my fingers with the screws. Didn't like that, so that was the first thing I had to go. Got that done. Second thing, let's see. For my curtains, I do intend, and I still do, I haven't done it yet, but I still intend to. I want to get it done a little more, but I want to take these things to train shows. So I had to make sure I had curtains all the way around. Well, initially, when the layout was sitting in my train room, the rear faces that were against the wall weren't exposed, so I didn't put the curtains on it. Subsequently, I didn't put the Velcro on it either. So, while it was out and away from the wall, I went ahead and installed the Velcro. Now when I go to train shows and it's out in the open in a display area, now I can have curtains on the complete 360 part of the layout. Make it look pretty when I'm at the train shows. Okay, next thing, I needed to run a dedicated DCC line. The reason for this is because my layout runs DC and DCC. I'm slowly getting into DC. I was a die-hard DC guy. I have a lot of locomotives, and we're talking locomotives before the 90s that were mostly a non-DCC, and they were non-DCC ready. Now I'm still talking Cato locomotives, Atlas locomotives, but none of these were designed with DCC in mind when they came out. So I have a lot of that stuff, and it all runs great. I don't want to get rid of it. Basically what I had to do is I had to make sure that my layout would run DCC as well as DC and not conflict with each other. Well, what happened was is I had my switch machines, namely these DS52s, like this one here and this one down here. What they were doing was, when I switched to DC, they're actually connected to the track wiring. And when the track wiring went DC, I lost the signal, so I no longer had control of the switches. I wanted to make sure that when I go to DC, I still have controls of my switches. I'll still want to be able to use my Digitrack system to do my switch control. So, and also I wanted to be able to use my computer. This layout and through the PR3, which is right here, it connects USB to my computer. And the idea of it is I want to still, even with a computer, want to be able to control my switches, even though the layout is set up for DC. So, in order to do that, I had to run a dedicated DCC line. So that's what I did. Okay, here in this area, I added another terminal strip, which is this one here. This is a dedicated DCC line. It has nothing to do with the track. These two here are for the track. This one does nothing more, and if you follow it around, it does nothing more than connects all my switch machines, including this DS64 and the other DS52 that I have. With that, now no matter what the layout is done, I can still run a dedicated DCC line to control my switches. Okay. Not only that, I had a bad cobalt machine. This is an older layout. I've been working on this now for about going on 6 years here, pretty close. I have first generation cobalt switches. Pretty much when they came out is when I got this. Their first, what they call the classic now, which was their first run. they had a problem inherent in them, and one of the switches was starting to show it, and it was this one here. I've already got it swapped out. This is the bad one. And what was happening is when this machine started to work, when you told it to move to do a switch maneuver and it started to move, when it hit the stop, the case would flex and allow the gears to come unmeshed, and it would just sit there and go click, 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 and not stop. So basically, the way I fixed it temporarily is I put a clamp on it so that the sides would not flex, and that fixed it for a little while, and then it started doing it again. I imagine after so many clicks, the teeth started chunking inside, and now they're no longer staying together, so had to swap it out. So that was on my list. Okay, the next thing. I needed to rerun my Warbonnet. My Warbonnet was all over. It was just terrible. I was running, bouncing back and forth. It was, I had probably almost 10, 12 feet of wire underneath more than I needed. And again, the shorter the Warbonnet, the more reliable it runs. So you can see my system here. I've got a temporary, my Digitrack system that I use on my HO layout. I brought it out here so I can test this, bench test it while it's still up and I don't have to climb under it. So I needed to test my Warbonnet, which is this here. It goes to my UP5, comes out of the UP5, and you can see, remember, I use my wire runs to keep the wires tamed up. Comes through here and it controls my DS64, and that's a pass-through, in and out. The outside comes out, goes to the PR3, and again, in and out. The outside here goes to the radio receiver that's on the end of the layout. Okay, that was the Warbonnet. Had to do that. Okay, I had about 3 switches that did not have a machine on it. Again, due to my track work, I don't like crawling under the layout. I've got hip issues. It's hard for me to bend and crawl under this thing, and when I do, I want to try to get as much done that I can. Well, since I had it turned up on end, I use this opportunity to get the machines in. I've got a stash of machines. I buy extras. And let this be a lesson here. When you buy a certain machine, buy 4 or 5 more. And these are a perfect example. They don't make this, DC Concepts makes these cobalt switches. The classic they do not make anymore. The wiring configuration on the new ones are different. Even though it's easy to wire up, why go through having to figure out how you lay it out, wired your layout, and having to go to redo your wiring to get the new machine in. Now you got one machine wired different from the rest of them. I bought 6 extras. Pretty much that will cover any failing switch machines for a long time. By the time I use my last one, they'll be gone to something really nice and I can swap them all out for the new thing. But in the meantime, now I don't have to worry about finding what I have broke here because I got a stash of them. Same thing with the DS64s. I have 2 extra DS64s. Who knows when, these things have been around a long time. Digitrax, I'm sure, has something new on the market that's going to hit the market. They're going to quit making these. You don't want to have to change your wiring to put something new in to replace something obsolete. And then even worse, now you're going to have to reconfigure your wiring. So I bought a couple of extra of those. Same thing with the DS52s. These are real simple. Now, these I could pretty much readily find other machines to handle the same job. NCE makes them. The people that make the frog juicer make machines as well. I could probably find something that would go in that spot right here, but why not have one that I can just take one out? If it's bad, throw it away, put the new one up there, and done. I don't have to worry about it. Buy a couple of extras, and do it when you don't need it. That's when, so you can save your money. Go ahead and buy it, put it in the box. It'll be there. Okay. So that was the Warbonnet. That was the machines. Basically where my machines went, sorry. This one here I had to install. And these two here I had to install. These two I had switches on the top side, but didn't install the machines yet. I just have them since they were all to sidings. I just nailed them closed so I could run on the main line and not have to worry about pulling into the sidings. Now that I got it on its end, I've got them working. So now I can actually do some switching on the layout. So I can't wait to get this thing on the ground and actually do a session of switching. And I'll have some videos on that. Okay. Next thing I had a pretty large list. Okay, wiring. My wiring was atrocious, and the reason why I went through this taming the wires thing in my little video, I'll have to figure out how to do a card. If I figure it out, it'll be up here, and I'll refer you to the taming the wires video that I'm doing, and that's what I had to do here. The wiring was terrible. And again, I was in a hurry. I wanted it to run, so I had wires hanging everywhere. Wires were. I have pictures. I'll see if I can find them and put them up in here. But it was ugly, to say the least. I'm kind of embarrassed that even telling you that I'll find them and show you. But anyway, redid the wiring, and you can see here with the switches, it's very self-contained. One wire for control, jumpers, and the switch wires themselves. Okay, and it's the same for each one. This is a crossover. Again, I had 2 or 3 wires on one screw. I had them underneath. I was in a hurry. Don't do that. Put what they call a pigtail. Put a pigtail on them. If you have 2 switches that are going to run off the same slot, go ahead and put them together. Also, add a pigtail on it so you can have just one wire going into the slot. Much neater, much easier. If you have a bad machine, you can just take the wire nut off, take the bad machine out, move the wires to the new machine, put it back in. It's very fast. You won't have to worry about, now you pulled the wires out, now the wire to the other machine came out, now you got to figure out how to get them back in, and when they're all frayed out, they just won't do it. Not easily, anyway. Okay, so that was the wiring. I had a DS64, and in fact, this one here. From the top, when I was putting my facility in, my one facility I still don't have a name for. I don't even know exactly what it's a facility for, but as I was screwing in the scenery on the top, one of the screws went through the DS64, and again, I'm working on the top. I didn't occur to me that there was something underneath. Went right through into the board of the DS64, cracked the board, broke a couple of foil runs in it. For my career before I retired, I was a micro miniature repair tech. So the board functioned before it broke. I just had to cross to connect some split foil runs. So first thing I did, I epoxied the board together, let it set, then came back, got it under not a microscope but a magnifier to see where the foil break was, cleared out the conformal coating a little further up, a little further back, connected with a jumper wire. Now it's working again. These things are expensive. Wanted to be able to fix it. I didn't want to have to go and buy a new one for something that, man, it just had a crack in it, and I didn't want to throw it away. It's easy to fix. The bench test. I didn't want to get this thing on the ground and find out something wasn't working. Or worse, maybe I had one or the 2 of the machines wired backwards by accident. And what I mean by backwards is if my throttle said it was set for turnout position instead of the mainline position, and it basically was moved backwards. It actually was set for the main instead of turnout. And I would have had to crawl under there and switch the wires. So that's the reason for the system up top. And again, this is on the HO system. I put it up here just temporary. Hook the Warbonnet up to test that. Hook my output power to all my switches so I could run. I got my throttle here to be able to be able to run through all the switches, and I'll just give you a couple of examples here. Okay, I got track status, and you can see by the status light on my Digitrax that it's all turned on. And let's see, switch 1. And I don't know if you can hear that, but you can hear them going off. Okay, so, and here's 2. Okay, and so on. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you got the idea they're going to work. The idea of it here is test everything. Test it before you put it in. Don't mount the DS64 or the DS52, get everything connected and find out it doesn't work. Hey, stuff comes in a package bad sometimes. You want to bench test it. Go ahead and have some way to check it. Okay, this is the list that I was working from. Basically, when I notice something that gets done, I take my phone out and I add it to this. This way, for instance, I had to get under the layout to get most all of these jobs done. So this way I don't miss any and have to get under there later on because I forgot something. I add it to this list, and this way I can knock it out before I put it back. Works out really good. Very organized. Anyway, that's the N-scale layout. I had a lot to do in the N-scale layout. So I'm going to pause just for a second, and we're going to go to the next one, the O-gauge layout. Okay, here we are at the O-gauge control area. And basically what I ended up doing, this is a little kind of like a two birds with one stone kind of thing. One, and you can see when I took my N-scale layout out that all my Lionel equipment actually sat on a cart that rolls out. Unfortunately, when I take my layout out, I lose my Lionel trains too. So when I have to take the layout down for my guest that comes and sleeps in a guest room, I don't have any trains at all. So what I have here is a little wall-mounted deal that has a top on it. This way you can put an alarm clock or anything that you need, lay your glasses on when you're sleeping. The bed sits right next to this, so it kind of doubles as a nightstand. Not only does it double as a nightstand, but the Lionel equipment all mounts underneath it, and real convenient. And now I still can run at least my Lionel trains while my guests are occupying the bedroom. Okay, and I'll pause you again, and we'll go to the HO layout. Okay, here we are by the HO layout. We're in the living room. Again, did a lot of stuff here. Mostly rolling stock work. I had a couple of structure works, and we'll go through that. As far as cars, let me roll these up from the other side. Okay, I've had some cars. If you're on Facebook, you've seen what I did with this, but I just did the underside for right now. But what this is, it's just it's a maintenance away car. It's a track working car. The bottom was really plain on this. It was just a flat weight. There was no frame or anything. So basically I built the frame out of evergreen plastic. Two colors only that I did to do some of the weathering on it. Okay, and that's the first one. Same thing here in the second one. This was my the last one of the train show finds that I did. This was a $2 car. It was missing a set of trucks. It didn't have any couplers. For $2, couldn't pass it up. These cars are getting, I won't say scarce, but they're starting to come up in price because they've been out of production for a little while. Athearn is not making them, and I wish they would, because these are great little cars if you have a tight layout to run them on. But again, did some repair work. I actually had an extra set of trucks that ran perfectly, so I'm going to go through and do a weathering job on this one. Okay, next one. Okay. Next to the water tank, again, same thing. I'm going to put a frame on this one, and this you can see how plain they look underneath. There's actually no detail at all. It's just a flat weight. So get to making a frame on this one, but you can see I started to weather it and decided, you know what, I'm going to stop, and then when we're going to make a frame. So this one is kind of 50% finished. Okay. My grandson, when we were in here playing about 2 weeks ago, came in and we did a switching operation. Well, seeing as I don't have any scenery on this yet, what we did was we made these little pieces of paper. And you can see this one says water tower. And we have a brick factory, we have a loading dock, we have a lumber mill, we have a passenger station, just a couple of little commodities. So before he came back, which is this weekend, actually tomorrow, I decided to start scratch building on, and again did the hardest one first. So I started with the water tower. Went outside, scratch built some cut some wood on my bandsaw, stripped it out. I made sure that it was in keeping with actual HO size, the girders and the beams that are underneath. You can see them under there. They're actually 3x10s. I have 3x8s, and the roof, you can see it's got just a little bit of truss work underneath it, not anything real fancy since you weren't going to see it. The actual tank I made around a pill jar. I laid out a piece of tape about the length of what the circumference of the pill jar was, laid all my boards right next to each other on end, peeled the tape up and wrapped it around the pill jar, glued the top, slid it off, and glued the bottom. I got a little video I'm going to do on this for right now, but this is all wood scratch built. So now I actually have a place for my water car to go. Okay. And last but not least, just some coupler work and stuff. The next scratch building project I'm going to do with this one is going to be my loading dock, which is going to be on that side over there. Oh, I got to lean down. But anyway, 3 layouts, or actually 2 layouts, 1 shelf layout for the O gauge. A lot of stuff done. And I might put out one more video on the scratch build of the water tank. Other than that, this will probably be it until after Christmas. Who knows, I might get a wild hair and do it. But anyway, that should be good.